Hi, everyone. Thanks again for continuing to journey with us through the world of certificates of merit. In the last two videos, Nate's walked us through the 12 different states and sort of the different variations of the certificates of merit for each one. I want to talk with you, Nate, about a little more particulars of the certificate of merit and how Nettleman land consultants can assist attorneys with this element of litigation. So just kind of like how Nettleman kind of play the role as the expert in some of these certificates of merit cases.
So before we get into it, let me just say, my name is Nate, and I'm the VP of Expert Services at Nettleman Land Consultants. Full disclosure, I am not an attorney. None of these videos are intended to be construed as legal advice. This is just very general, formative information for folks.
So I guess in your experience, I guess my first question would be, what are kind of the most common pitfalls the counsel faces when they're preparing the certificate of merit, or as you mentioned in some of the states, the affidavit of merit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've been a paralegal now for 15 years. Several of those years have been with Nettleman Land Consultants, where our expert witness, Dr. Nettleman, the president and owner of. So I would say generally in my experience, I mean, the number one pitfall that I've seen is not filing the certificate of merit at all, which, you know, as we learned in the last couple of videos, is a huge no-no. Either because the attorney didn't know that it was required, didn't think that it was required, but it happens where,
so just sort of like the not just preparation, but like you had mentioned, each state having their own sort of sets of level of detail. So it sounds like it's important to have that properly vetted and know your state's kind of the rules and the different criteria.
Yes, know the requirements. And I would say the second most common pitfall would be when an attorney does not properly vet their expert.
That makes sense. So that kind of leads me to the follow-up question I had. What are the qualifications that an expert would possess under the relevant jurisdiction's rules? So like the same specialty, active practice, the board certified. I guess what are the kind of the standard qualifications the expert would need?
And again, I'm going to just be speaking in generalities because there's nuances between states. Mm-hmm. There's nuances between professions.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So, I don't know, for fun, let's take surveying, since that's what
just
we know
as an
about.
example. That sounds good.
Yeah. So if you're looking for a land surveying expert witness, such as Dr. Nettleman, you want to make sure that witness, one, is knowledgeable in the subject area. So if you're looking for a land surveying expert witness, you may not want to just pull a random civil engineer off the street to be your expert. You want someone who's knowledgeable and has experience and training in surveying.
Okay.
If that's what the claims of the case are about, you want a surveyor. You want somebody who is knowledgeable in that subject area. The second thing you want to look at in vetting your expert is, has this expert testified before? Has this expert been retained as an expert before? I'm not saying that that's the be-all end-all consideration, but if someone, you find has never testified in court, is nervous about, standing firm in their objective opinions, you might want to think twice about getting that expert on board, because he or she may not be able to factually support their opinions.
That makes sense. So they kind of have to have the expertise in the specific area, the knowledge, and also kind of have the ability to give that expert opinion objectively and for the case, for whichever the industry it is, it sounds like. And so you wouldn't just grab somebody whose experience is all from 30 years ago, because I'm guessing sort of that current experience and sort of being up to speed while also providing an expert opinion, I assume is probably important too.
Exactly. And it's interesting you should bring that up, because that reminded me of in our work with some clients in Texas. I don't have the exact language on the top of my head, but there is something in the requirements about the expert must have been actively engaged in the profession over the last certain period of years. Like I said, I don't have the exact language, but
that makes sense in terms of whether since it in the 12 states you referenced, it sounds like that's the sort of part of the criteria for determining whether it was worth sort of pursuing, and you would want to have that for your expert to understand what the certificates of merit apply to in the real world, not just sort of on paper, it sounds like.
Right. They need to be up to date with, the practices, procedures, the standard of care that we mentioned.
That'll evolve in each one. Yeah.
Yeah. Which again are different per state, but also they are the rules of professional conduct that many licensed professionals are guided by and must abide by. Those are updated regularly. And so your expert should be someone who is up to date on what does the applicable standard of care say about when a surveyor does XYZ.
That makes sense, especially across different industries. It sounds like that would be just kind of a staple in terms of qualifying yourself as an expert. And obviously it's totally different industries, so you kind of have to have that check mark in terms of, is that person able to provide something that's a useful expert opinion. So on to, I guess, the next question, what kind of documents or records are typically provided to the experts for them to review and then provide that opinion on?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, we'll use a land surveying expert as an example. So, someone looking to file, say, a surveyor negligence claim against a surveyor or a surveying company. An expert on the plaintiff side would certainly want to see any of the surveys that the plaintiff alleges were incorrect. The expert would also want to see records regarding the surveyor defendant's history. Have there been any complaints previously filed with the state board against this particular surveyor? That is informative. Depending on exactly how the attorney has worded the claims, really would dictate what other documentation that the expert would want to review. There possibly may be some medical records involved if there was some injury. But in most land surveying negligence type cases, public records, deeds, plats related to properties, and again, looking at exactly what the defendant surveyor did and how he or she did it is going to be the main consideration in a negligence case, because again, it comes back to that standard of care.
And I guess, how strict are the courts regarding not the documentation, but just, as you've gone through the different states, you've kind of mentioned that there's timing and the requirements kind of fluctuate for the certificates or affidavits of merit. How, in your opinion, I guess, how strict are the courts for the timing and the requirements when they review it?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question to end this video on. As we talked about in the previous two videos, every state is a little bit different when it comes to the timing, whether it be with the original complaint or petition, or whether there's some, I guess, flexibility as to when that certificate is filed. Some states, give 30, 60, 90 days after filing. Some set the time deadline based on when the initial disclosures are due. Some states, give the plaintiff 30, 60 days after the defendant files an answer. So there are nuances between the states. But in my experience, courts are generally strict on these timelines. I'm speaking in generalities based
Right.
on, my experience. Every court is different. Every judge is different. Every case is different. But generally speaking, this is a requirement in these types of litigated cases. And so if an attorney doesn't have one, in my experience, is generally detrimental to pushing forward the claims. But again, every
and that
case
would make
is
sense that,
different.
like,
There's always exceptions.